Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I will be running through my transfer plans ahead of Game Week 16 with 5 free transfers ready to use. Welcome back everyone to another video. In today's video, I'll be running through my early transfer thoughts ahead of Game Week 16 and taking a quick look back at how Game Week 15 wrapped up on the Monday evening. As always, if you did enjoy today's video, I'd massively appreciate it if you could leave a like and hit subscribe to the channel. That would be very, very helpful of you. Let's first off take a quick look back at Game Week 15. I don't want to dwell on it for too long, but until Monday evening, it was looking like a really, really bad week for me. That would have been 2 in a row, and I would have gone from something like 250k to 600k in 2 game weeks, which would have been a bit of a nightmare. However, surprisingly enough, Man United did me a bit of a favour. Bruno Fernandes coming in with 18 points, which is unbelievable, far beyond anything I could have expected from him. 2 goals, including a penalty, of course, and an assist. I think it's worth noting that Wolves definitely seemed to do Man United a bit of a favour in that game. And of course, during that match, Brian Mbeumo also bagged a goal as well. So I got 26 points out of my double Man United midfield, which got me from 35 points up to 61 and a healthy green arrow in the end, taking me from 420k to 320. My transfer this week, with my final free transfer before we all got reloaded to 5, was Semenyo out for Foden. Semenyo, I think, scored after about a minute or 2 minutes in the Bournemouth game. Luckily for me, anyway, it was ruled out. And Foden ended up with a goal and an assist and a bonus point, I think, as well, hitting 12 points and his 3rd double-digit return in a row. So very glad to have him before what seems to be a flurry of price rises. I think he's gone up 0.4 million since I've owned him. And I think I've only owned him about 5 days. So that is kind of crazy. Elsewhere in my side, I got attacking returns from Bukayo Saka, or 1 attacking return from Bukayo Saka, 4 points from him, yellow card, brought off a little bit early when the game was still a little bit in the balance as well. So maybe one to monitor for the future. Maybe his minutes aren't going to be quite as solid as they have been in previous seasons. Anderson getting DEFCON in my midfield as well meant that I got points from all of my midfielders, which was great to see, especially considering I've spent a lot in my midfield. Elsewhere, though, bit of a different story. Haaland, my captain, pretty much like everyone else, blanked. Do let me know if you captained anyone else this week, by the way. His ownership was incredibly high, so it didn't really hurt me that he blanked, although I could have captained Bukayo Saka or Fernandes. I think my vice actually ended up on Fernandes, so I should have switched that over. But if I captained anyone else, I probably would have gotten a bit more out of it. But happy enough with my decision making. Thiago blanked. In my defence, I had Nick Pope injured again. Dubravka came on with 2 save points, although he did concede twice. And then Timber got me DEFCON. Lacroix and Anderson were actually nowhere near DEFCON, which is quite strange for both of those players. Usually they're much closer. And Senesi, surprisingly enough, did manage to finally keep a clean sheet. And the week he did it, he was on my bench. Also got DEFCONs, 8 points from him. Little bit annoying to see points on my bench like that. But I think, again, my decision-making was fairly solid. I don't think I would have started him ahead of Lacroix or Anderson. Timber was always going to start for me. So I'm happy enough with the decision-making. Up 100k and up to 320k overall. Happy enough with that. And now I've got 5 free transfers to use with 0.4 million in the bank. So let's take a look at how my Game Week 16 side is currently shaping up. Okay, so this video is primarily focused on my transfer plans. So I'm not going to go into captaincy right now too much. All I'll say is it is very split between Saka and Haaland. I've currently got it on Haaland just because I haven't made my mind up, and that's where my captaincy was last week. But that will be a decision I make in a future video. So do tune in for that in my team selection video in a couple of days. Looking at what needs to be sorted out in my team, and of course I can sort a lot out given I've got 5 free transfers. Pope is an obvious first issue, and we'll go into the replacements for him in a moment's time, but he's still red flagged. I doubt he'll be back in the next couple of game weeks, so I probably do need to move him on. Now, it is worth noting I've got Dubravka on my bench at home to Fulham this week. Fulham don't tend to be high scorers, and given it's a home fixture, I don't hate starting him if I have to. But given I've got 5 free transfers, it probably does just make sense to at least make a keeper transfer this week, and then even if I just make that one move, I'm still restocked up to 5 free transfers next week. And given Pope looks likely to be out for a while, that does make sense. We'll go into the replacements in a moment's time, of course. Elsewhere, Senesi is a yellow flag and was brought off with an injury in game week 15. It was noted that they're hopeful it would be cramps rather than a proper injury, but we'll hopefully find out more throughout the week. If that is a proper injury, it will be a little bit frustrating because he's got Burnley, not Bournemouth, next week. And obviously that is a great fixture with good chance of a clean sheet, good chance of DEFCON. I would like to hold on to him for that. But given my defence probably isn't my strongest point this week anyway, either with Senesi starting away at Man United or Lacroix at home to Man City, possibly even Rodon away at Brentford could be in with a shout of starting. That final defensive spot in a 3-5-2 is not my strongest point. So in any other game week, I'd probably roll the transfer. But given we've got 5, it's an opportunity to maybe fix that issue and maximise the points for this week. Timber's going nowhere, very happy with him. At centre-back, also getting DEFCON at the moment as well. And Anderson against Burnley away from home, it's a good chance of a clean sheet. And of course, he's very good on the DEFCON, although he didn't hit it in game week 15, which was a bit frustrating. Into my midfield, undoubtedly my strongest point. Saka could end up as my captain this week at home to Wolves, who did look pretty ropey against Man United. You would think that Arsenal could capitalise on that and maybe bag a few, so he is in the shout for captaincy. And of course, I've only got double Arsenal at the moment, which is worth noting. It might be worth looking at a transfer in on another Arsenal player to really go after that fixture, because it does look like Wolves are there for the taking right now. Elsewhere in my midfield, I've still got that double Man United in there. So Fernandes, who I'm very happy with, now the top scoring midfielder in the game. It is also worth noting that he did miss 2 penalties earlier on in the season. And obviously, you can't change history. He missed those penalties. So those aren't points that you deserve out of him. But things could have been so different. He could have been plus 100 points right now if he'd hit those 2 penalties. And obviously he's had the opportunity to get more points. I just think he's a fantastic option. Very happy to own him, and I imagine his price will rise very quickly. And Burmo is going to be sold very soon for me and is penciled out as a transfer out next week, because it looks likely he'll be fine to play in game week 16 and then go off to the African Cup of Nations shortly after that. So won't be around for game week 17, will be around, we hope and think, and given all of the news we've seen, for game week 16. Obviously, if that changes, I will let you know, but it looks like he's going to be fine for that game. And I'm happy enough to play him against Bournemouth as well. Foden, away at Crystal Palace, probably not the easiest fixture, but Phil Foden is in a fantastic purple patch at the moment. He's getting very good minutes. It got brought off a little bit early against Sunderland, but given it's Real Madrid in the midweek, that's not massively surprising. I would be very surprised if he missed Crystal Palace, considering how good Crystal Palace have been this season even. I'd be very surprised if he missed out on the Crystal Palace away game, given how well Crystal Palace are playing this season. I think Pep's going to go full force on that one. And then he's got great fixtures after that as well. So again, very happy to own him. And it does give me a very strong, very expensive midfield 4, accompanied by Elliot Anderson, who is consistently hitting DEFCON. Not the worst goal threat in the world either. So I think at some point I'm going to get lucky with a goal or an assist and get a haul out of him. But in the meantime, I'm happy with him trundling along with 4 and 5 pointers to supplement and make possible the rest of my midfield. Because if he was a bit more expensive, the other 4 wouldn't be able to be squeezed in. So I'm happy enough with that. Up front, Haaland's going nowhere. Again, arguably not the best captain this week, but we'll talk about that in a later video. And Thiago is just coming into his very good run of fixtures now and is still at a very good price on penalties, decent underlying data. Leeds at home, very happy with that. So let's take a look at the 2 issues I've flagged. So Pope and Senesi first up, and see where my transfers are most likely to be used there. And then I'll take a look at a few different combination moves that I like the look of, because we've got the 5 free transfers. I can go a little bit more aggressive if I would like to. Okay, so starting off with the red flag, that of course is Nick Pope. It doesn't look likely that he's going to be back anytime soon. So now I've got the 5 free transfers. I had this move penciled in for when I got maxed out with those transfers, so I could be a bit more aggressive with my transfers at this point. So I think this is the week that I'm going to make that move. There are 3, maybe even 4 options that I quite like the look of. Sanchez at Chelsea is also possibly in my thinking, but I think the three most likely are Raya, Kelleher, or Verbruggen. Now, Raya is 6 million, probably not great value for money, and is probably only ever going to get you an upside of 6 points, maybe 7 if you get lucky with a save point as well. But his upside is fairly low. Even though that is the case, I'm still relatively tempted to go there, given the fixtures and given the underlying defensive data for Arsenal. No other defender right now fills me with massive confidence outside of Timber in that back line. White probably can't guarantee the minutes. Nkapie as well, maybe not guaranteed. Calafiori suspended for this week. Saliba, we don't know whether he's back or not. I think it's too much in flux. So Raya is probably the only other way that I could double up defensively with Arsenal. And Wolves is a fantastic fixture after all. 3 home games in the next 4. I'd be surprised if they didn't keep clean sheets there. So I could go for him. Unfortunately, I don't have the money to do it in one move. So that will be one of the combination moves that I show you in just a moment's time. But I am tempted to go there. If I downgraded the position to someone like a Kelleher or a Verbruggen, it would give me money to then upgrade someone in my defense in a later game week, or possibly even this week if I found a combination I liked. And I'm tempted to do that mainly because there are more expensive defenders like Daniel Munoz, for example, who I still don't own. I would love to own. And although he's a doubt for Man City, maybe not the best time to be bringing him in, having a little bit more money in the bank to do so would be a nice option to have in game week 17 or game week 18. So that is in the back of my mind. Kelleher and Verbruggen, I don't think there's a lot between the two of them. Verbruggen is slightly edging it for underlying defensive data, so that XGC per 90, very, very slight difference. So it's not even worth noting or using that as an excuse to go for him. I do really like the rotation between Dubravka and Verbruggen. It basically gives me some really solid home fixtures all the way through to game week 21, with the exception, I think, of the West Ham away game, where I'll probably play him over Dubravka. But they do rotate really well. This week, obviously, I'd be benching him and starting Dubravka against Fulham at home. And it is the cheapest starting keeper combination that you can have in the game right now. A 4.4 with a 4 million keeper saves me so much money. Verbruggen's actually been pretty good this season. I actually like the look of how he's performing. Brighton defensively, like I mentioned, not all that bad. I quite like it. I'm on board with Verbruggen. The other option, of course, Kelleher, also tempting. Probably slightly better fixtures if you wanted to start your more expensive keeper every week. So this would not be a rotation pairing with Dubravka. If I just want to start one keeper, I'll go with Kelleher. If I want to start a rotation pairing, or if I can make peace with a Burnley keeper starting some of the game weeks despite their defensive data, then I'll probably go with Verbruggen. Right now, I think I'm leaning with Verbruggen. So with Senesi in mind, it's more of a question mark as to whether or not I want to make this move, especially with next game week in mind. Burnley at home is a fantastic fixture. I don't massively hate Man United or Brentford away from home either. So I think he's playable, especially considering he is a very successful DEFCON defender. He will have a high hit rate, and therefore it does bring up his floor. So I don't think he's a desperate sell if he's fit. But again, with the 5 free transfers, it might be an opportunity to just move him on. And O'Reilly especially is very tempting. He consistently is getting 90 minutes a match. And despite my earlier hesitations, Pep is just starting him no matter what at the moment. So I am very tempted. The attacking data is much better than Senesi's. In fact, it's better than some midfielders. 0.27 is phenomenal. He's getting into very advanced areas and has very good fixtures round the corner as well. Arguably, Crystal Palace away is the most difficult of the lot. So this week might not be naturally the best time to make this move. However, with his attacking upside, I don't hate it. And if Senesi is a doubt and we can't guarantee him starting this week, then I'm looking at Lacroix at home to Man City, or Rodon away at Brentford. Now, Rodon's away data or Leeds away data is very poor. So if Senesi is out or a significant doubt, then I think I prefer O'Reilly away at Palace over Lacroix or Rodon this week. So it's probably a move worth making. If I did want to maximise this game week, and also down the line as well, it's not all that bad. Chelsea's defensive data is very good. And Chalobah is now one of the top point scoring defenders in the game. He's got a very high points per start and he's starting regularly, getting 90 minutes as well. Not bad on the DEFCON. He does pick up the odd attacking return too, and 3 home fixtures in the next 4 game weeks. Not at a bad price. I'm tempted to look at him as well. However, when we fast forward to next game week, that's when it gets a little bit more tricky because he's got Newcastle away, and I would have just sold Senesi, who would have Burnley at home that week. And O'Reilly is the other option, who has West Ham at home that week. So maybe longer term, if I can guarantee the minutes, sticking with Senesi or just going with O'Reilly is the better way of playing it. There are a couple of other routes that I like that don't involve selling Senesi. So let's also take a look at that. And it would be using 2 free transfers, but I think I can get on board with that this week if needed. Okay, so let's wrap up the video by taking a look at a few of the combination moves I quite like the look of using FPL Team, a fantastic free tool. I would highly recommend you give it a go if you haven't already. FPL.team, completely free to use. This is not sponsored. I just really like it. So starting off with Nick Pope, which is the obvious sale. I think if I'm making a combination move, the most likely keeper to come in would be David Raya. Otherwise, I could just make the 1 free transfer because I've got the money to do so. So Raya coming in for Pope means I need to find 0.4 million elsewhere. Now, given I've got 4 other free transfers to use, this is entirely plausible. Now, the first route that I quite like the look of is to actually sell Lacroix this week rather than Senesi. Now, selling Lacroix would actually mean that I've got a little bit of money to go from Lacroix to someone like a Vandenberg. Now, Vandenberg at 4.5 million, good fixtures coming. And instead of Kelleher, I'd have Vandenberg in that Brentford defence. So it gives me a bit of best of both worlds. Could also look at Van Heck as well at 4.5 million for Brighton. So either way, I can cover off the defence that I'm not getting by getting Raya in. Although with Van Heck, it must be noted that if I'd be looking at starting them this week, it'd be Liverpool away. So less than ideal. Vandenberg, probably the better pick there. Good fixtures coming, and I don't need to start him every single week. So that's one route I like the look of. Raya alongside Vandenberg for Lacroix. But then, of course, I'm exposed to Crystal Palace defence. This week, at home to Man City, not a problem. I'll make peace with that. But next week, I'd only have 0.1 in the bank. And although, in fairness, I really like the look of that starting 11, and Burmo would be sold for maybe a Semenyo or possibly even a Soboslai, someone like that. We don't need to talk about that this week. But I've only got 0.1 million to get back to a Crystal Palace defender. And they've got Leeds away from home that week. So I will be massively exposed to ownership. Crystal Palace are a good defence. That doesn't fill me with confidence. So that's one route I don't mind, but it does leave me exposed to Crystal Palace. The other way I can look at doing this, so again, Raya would come in for Nick Pope, would be to maybe get rid of Mbermo a week early. Now, given he's just scored and he's got Bournemouth at home, I don't think he's a must sell. I think I'm perfectly happy to play him this week, but to save the money and to also get Raya, hold on to Lacroix in the process, I don't mind the look of this move. So Mbermo down, it would have to be. Cunha is one option. So I just go straight back to another Man United midfielder, 7.9 million. It would give me 0.2 in the bank. Don't mind that whatsoever. Or I could also look at just bringing in Semenyo a week early. Man United away from home, not the easiest game in the world, but can I see him scoring that game? Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's been pretty unlucky not to get returns, especially in the last couple of game weeks. So I could look at making this move a week early. And of course, it's a move that I was probably going to make in game week 17 for Burnley at home anyway. So it kind of saves me a transfer in game week 17 where, okay, I can probably use a transfer elsewhere, but I don't need to make any moves this week. I can go with a 4-4-2, Anderson first subbed, and I've got Lacroix as my Crystal Palace defender. I've got double Arsenal defence. I've got Senesi still for Burnley. I think overall I quite like that combination, but it does mean getting rid of a Man United midfielder at home to Bournemouth this week, which again, I don't mind having. I don't mind Mbermo this week. So any other week, I'd probably roll that one or just not go for Raya in the first place. But I am quite tempted to do so. As it stands, though, I think the most likely combination, especially if Senesi is a major doubt, would be Pope out for Verbruggen. And where is Verbruggen here? He's all the way down at 4.4 million. So he's ultra cheap. I'd be starting Dubravka this week and then probably selling Senesi for O'Reilly. Now, I don't love O'Reilly's fixture this week, but I think it's good enough to be starting over Lacroix or Rodon. He's obviously very attacking. And it does mean that I go into game week 17 with O'Reilly at home to West Ham, Timber away at Everton, Nottingham Forest at home for Anderson, all very playable, and Lacroix can come back in instead of Anderson. Anderson first sub, by the way, is absolutely fine as well. Perfectly happy with that. And Burmo would then be sold this week. So, and Burmo, let's again, for argument's sake, say it's going to be Semenyo. It might be someone else. But then that also gives me 1.6 million in the bank. I could use that money immediately in game week 17 to go from Lacroix to Munoz if I wanted to, or I could wait another week and maybe go with double Crystal Palace defence by selling some other defender, maybe Anderson, maybe look at selling Rodon and going up to a Mark Gahey or a Richards instead and doubling up that way. Of course, in this game week, I'd be starting Verbruggen ahead of Dubravka. So that's another combination I quite like the look of. I think overall this is probably the path I prefer because it adds that extra layer of flexibility. But I am tempted to go with that double Arsenal defence this week and take the gamble on them keeping a clean sheet against Wolves because I think the odds are pretty good of that happening. Either way, not completely locked at the moment, but I think I'm going to use a maximum of 2 free transfers this week. I don't want to go ultra aggressive. I quite like the look of my side generally. So I don't want to use all of them right at once. And I think they'll come in handy later on in the season. But I'm open to using a couple this week, maybe a couple next week if I need to. As we reach the end of today's video, I massively appreciate it if you could leave a like, hit subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time as we run through my team selection ahead of Game Week 16.